What's up, everyone? This is JjLee back with the JjLee Hockey Show. Let's get into all the news from the week. There's not as much to talk about as last week because obviously last week we had the Four Nations tournament to talk about, and then the first 2 days back were insanely eventful. But still a good amount of stuff to talk about. The trade deadline's in like 5 days now, so let's get to it. First, it was reported by Darren Dreger the other day that quote it's like. Sorry, I'm not sure if this is a quote or not because I found the source credited to Darren Dreger, but not like from him. So basically they're saying it looks like it's increasingly likely that Mitch Marner could hit the open market in free agency. And this is definitely something big to talk about because there's been a lot of questions the past couple of years on Marner's future in Toronto. Is he going to be a Maple Leaf? Is he going to be a Maple Leaf for life? Is he going to get traded sometime soon? Like it's been kind of his future in Toronto has been kind of dicey because, I mean, this season he has 59 games played, 18 goals, 57 assists for 75 points, which is tied for fourth in points in NHL. But, and then over the past 5 years, so since the 2021 COVID shortened season, he has 335 games played, 129 goals, 294 assists for 423 points. So he's tied for fourth in points this season with 75, and he's tied. I mean, he's at seventh in points over the past 5 seasons. So obviously, he's been one of the best forwards the past 5 seasons during the regular season. He's also been a Selke level defensive player. So he's about to come off a 6-year contract worth $10.9 million a year. He's definitely going to want to raise, and based off what he's done in the past several regular seasons, he's worth that. The problem, however, comes in the playoffs because we know he's shown time and time again he's not proven he can show up in the playoffs. Last year in 2024, he had 3 points in 7 games in the playoffs. 2023, he actually did pretty good that year. He had 14 points in 11 games. 2022, 8 points in 7 games, which is still over a point per game, but from a guy like Marner, who's, like I said, seventh in points over the past 5 years, you definitely expect more than just barely over a point per game. And then in 2021, 4 points in 7 games, but 0 goals. So they were all assists, which assists do count, but like, it's just, I hope you guys kind of get the point. I mean, most of you guys who follow hockey should already know about all this, is that Marner is just not showing up in the playoffs. We also saw in the Four Nations tournament, that was like kind of an indicator too on players that show up in the big moments. And he did have the overtime winning goal for Canada in game 1, but after that didn't really do a whole lot. So he's just time and time again not been able to prove that he can show up in the big moments. So it really would not surprise me if the Maple Leafs move on from him, especially if they lose early again this year, because they've lost in the first round every year since 2004 except for 2023, but even in 2023, they got to the second round, but they lost in 5 games. They were down 3-0, so they were that close to getting swept. Like, it wasn't really that much of an accomplishment that year, or like much better that year, because, like I said, they did make the second round, but they didn't get much further in the second round. They were so close to getting swept. So, if the Maple Leafs, we've heard so much year after year that if they don't do very well in the playoffs, then we could see some shakeups in the Maple Leafs core. And I think if they finally decide to do it this year, then it could be Marner going. Unfortunately for them, though, then they lose him for nothing instead of being able to trade him, because in previous years they were saying they're going to try to trade him, or the rumor was that they were going to try to trade him for assets, because he still get a decent amount of assets, but now they lose him for nothing. Although I mentioned he could still get a decent amount of assets, but it's still not people they would have wanted, because everyone knows he can't show up in the playoffs. And that kind of leads me to the fact where, he's going to want a lot of money, because, when he's on if he does hit the open market, so many teams I think would want him, like, as a player. But the problem would be he's going to want more money than anyone's going to want to pay him, because he's going to want the money of a player who is a top 10 forward in NHL, or definitely top 15 forward in the NHL. But the problem is everyone knows he can't show up when it matters most. So he'll be there all regular season, but then when they get into the playoffs, they can't count on him. I do think, excuse me. I do think, however, maybe he could strive on a team that's like that's got more physical guys already that could kind of stand up for him, and so that he doesn't have to be as like grindy because like you've got. I mean, I know the Maple Leafs do have some physical guys. I mean, they don't have them anymore, but they've had guys like Bertuzzi, Domi, and then they've got they have brought in some tough guys, but they really aren't known to be a physical team. So maybe if Marner was on a more physical team, then the pressure would be taken off him to be more physical. Or like if basically it'd be a thing where if you go after, everyone will know to stand up for him. So like it'll be like if you go after Marner, then you're gonna get someone else is gonna come after you. So we'll see what happens there. I think it's very interesting, obviously, because Marner's one of the biggest names in NHL, but he just hasn't proven he can show up in the playoffs time and time again. And excuse me. Now that he's in his how many seasons? Ninth season, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's something's got to change because the Maple Leafs have had this core for 9 seasons now, and if they still can't get anywhere in the playoffs, then it's clear that something's not working. They're going to have to change it up. Moving forward, because we're speaking of the Leafs, this time around something good that happened for them. They came back on a 3-0 deficit to the Bruins because obviously we all know the stories of it's always the Bruins who were beating the Leafs in the first round. The Bruins obviously had that famous comeback in 2013 when they were down 4-1 in the third period and came back. But this time around, it was the Leafs coming back on the Bruins. The game summary was Pastrnak scores from Leray and Zacha at 29 seconds in the first. Then Marchand scores on the power play from Pastrnak and Leray at 13:59 in the first, so it's 2-0 Bruins now. Second period, Morgan Geekie scores from Elias Lindholm and Brad Marchand at 10 minutes in the second period. So now it's 3-0 Bruins, looking great for them. However, then Morgan Riley scores from Nyes and Oliver Ekman-Larsson at 13:52 in the third. So so we're talking almost 4 minutes after Geekie made it 3-0. Going to the third period, Marner scores on the power play from Tavares and Riley at 59 seconds in the third period. So game started off the third period now within 1. Then Robertson ties it from Riley and Stollarz at 6:40 in the third period. Now, Pastrnak does get the lead back for the Bruins unassisted at 10:33 in the third period. However, Pontus Holmberg scores from Robertson and Ekman-Larsson at 9:14 in the third period. So tied again, and then got a bit of a runny nose today, so I just had to take care of that. I'll probably have to do it again throughout the show today. Sorry about that. But then overtime, Mitch Marner does come up big. He scores from Matthews and Riley to end it for the Leafs, with the Leafs winning. So it was just a notable game I wanted to talk about because obviously we know the history. It's always the Bruins beating the Leafs, owning the Leafs. So now we're starting to see some reverse on that. Bruins are probably going to miss the playoffs this year. And Leafs, I mean, we'll see if they prove that they're not playoff chokers, but yeah, the 1 year the Leafs at least made it to the second round was the year the Bruins had the historic President's Trophy season and blew it in the first round. We're up 3-1 on the Panthers and blew it in 7 games. So I would say that these past 3 years, I'd say the Bruins were. I mean, the Bruins were more. Actually, I don't know. I was going to say they were more embarrassing than the Leafs, but then you got to think about last year. At least the Bruins made the second round, whereas the Leafs didn't. But I'm trying to remember who everyone played. The Leafs played the Panthers, and the Bruins would have played the. Oh my gosh, why can't I remember? Pretty sure it was the Lightning, which the Lightning have obviously come back this year as a really dangerous team. But last year, I'd say they were a good team, but I would say the Bruins were definitely the favorites over them. So, yeah, I mean, you could debate that back on topic though, you could debate that the Leafs have been or the Bruins have been more embarrassing than the Leafs the past couple of years, because they had the massive choke in 2023, and they've really not proven anything since. So we'll see what the future of the Bruins is. It's not looking too pretty right now. Their prospect pool isn't great. Marchand's getting older. There are guys like that they signed in the offseason, like Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, haven't been doing great. McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm are out for the rest of the season, which is not looking good for the rest of the season for them. They'll obviously be back next year. Hopefully Swayman can bounce back next year. He's not had a good year, but I think he will bounce back. I think he is still one of the best goalies in the league. It's just every goalie does have a down year. But yeah, just the Bruins, their offense is really concerning moving forward, especially if Marchand continues to progress, which he probably will. He is 36 now. If Lindholm doesn't step up, then they're still really lacking at center. So there's really only forward that looks like they're going to have that's really elite in the next few years is Pastrnak, which he obviously cannot do it by himself. He's looked like he's carried the team so many times this season, and he just can't do it all himself. So we'll see what the Bruins do moving forward, but the future is looking pretty murky for them. Next, we had an interesting report from 1025 The Game. I think that's how you say it, or maybe it's 1025 The Game, but basically that's the source. And they said Barry Trotz told the Nashville Predators players that he has, quote, no problem trading them if they don't want to play there anymore. And obviously, Nashville's had a very disappointing season too. They were supposed to be one of the best teams in the league this year, or not one of the best teams in the league, but they had like one of the biggest off seasons, or probably the biggest off season at the time. They got Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea. So everyone thought they were going to do really good, but it's not happened. They're currently third last in the league with teams with just Chicago and San Jose below them. They're currently 49 points, 21, 32, and 7. And I mean, the season's over for them. I don't think they're officially eliminated yet, but there's no way they're going to catch up to all these other teams. I've not watched too many games for the Predators this year, but it seems like they are a slow team, which is going to have an impact. Because I do remember I've talked a lot with my dad about this, because it's something we talked about for years. When I first started watching hockey almost a year ago, so we always talked about like the Caps and the Penguins. The Penguins were the faster team, but the Caps were the more physical team. And while I know the Penguins did unfortunately get past the Caps beat the Caps every year until 2018, we were still saying that there were ups and downs to both. Like, the faster teams tend to get banged up a little more. The more physical teams tend to, be tougher in the playoffs and everything. However, it's changed. So, the game's getting faster and faster. So that was almost a decade ago now, which I cannot believe, but almost a decade ago now. But now it's gotten to the point where the game's getting so fast that you can't just rely on physicality anymore. Like you're going to, like, if you can't keep up with a faster team, then you're not going to win. But yeah, because like we've seen more and more teams get like physical, but also have speed. Like the Caps this year have some fast players, but also are very, very physical. I'm trying to think who else. Vegas, physical team, but they do have some good skaters. But you get the point. It's gotten to where you do need physicality, of course, because otherwise your team does get banged up. We've talked about players like that can't perform in the playoffs mostly because they're not very physical. So I'm not saying the physicality isn't still important, but the skating is also obviously really important. You can't go with, if you're not a fast team, which, okay, I probably sound a little silly right now. Of course, it's always been important. Like, I'm not saying 10 years ago when you had the physical teams and the finesse teams that, one or the other was more important. But like, I'm not saying that the skating wasn't important for the physical teams, that the physicality wasn't important then for the faster teams. But I'm just saying that teams like almost 10 years ago, you saw could get away with not being the best skaters, but not being I take that back, not not being the fastest team, but but just like their physicality made up for it. Now it's like you can't do that because the game is just getting so much faster every year. The kids coming up are so fast, so quick, and yeah, I mean we have seen this trend though for years. The physicality, and it seems like every decade the physicality in the game is getting less and less, and it's getting more about speed, finesse, and everything. So Nashville's probably suffering from that a lot. You look at their points leaders. Philip Forsberg, 54 points is their points leader. That's in like 60 games. That's like a second. That's like a decent first line or second line player. That's not good enough for your number one forward. Jonathan Marchessault, 45 points. Roman Josi, 38 points. He's a defenseman, but he's been one of the best offensive defensemen in the league the past several years, and he's not living up to that. Ryan O'Reilly, 36 points. Steven Stamkos, 33 points, which Stamkos was supposed to be another huge guy for them, signing him in the offseason. He's not showed up either. It's like all their offseason additions are not panning out. You also have Brady Shea, who's been terrible defensively after being good for the Hurricanes past several years. Like everything that could possibly go wrong for Nashville this year is going wrong. And like I said, I've not seen too many Predators games this year, but it just sounds like they just don't have, it's like they don't have the heart. They're just kind of sluggish, which, you can't really, but like, you also have to think how much of that has to do with the fact that they're just not very fast. Like some of them are getting older, and like I said, some of them might just base their game more off of physicality, which as time's going on, like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but like I said, as time's going on, the game's just getting faster and faster, and the guys who aren't very fast just can't keep up. So Nashville's not looking good for them. We'll see what happens next, just like I said with the Bruins, but it's looking like they're heading for a rebuild for sure. And next up, it was reported by Canadiens PR that Kirby Dach is out for the rest of the season with a knee injury, and you gotta feel for the guy because he just cannot stay healthy. He's literally like made of glass. This season, he has 57 games played, which that's unfortunately all he's willing to play this year. 10 goals, 12 assists for 22 points, and in his career, 269 games played, 43 goals, 78 assists for 121 points. Obviously, a third overall pick in 2019. You expected more from him, but I feel like you have to give him some slack because injuries definitely have seemed to slow him down as he's been trying to improve, to develop and improve. This season, like I just said, 57 games played. Last season, 2023-24, only 2 games played because he was injured for almost just about the entire season. 2022-23, 58 games played. 2021-22, 70 games played. That's the best he's ever had, which I mean is almost the entire season, but still, like that's still 12 games missed, and that's the best he's ever had. 2020 to 2021, 18 games played, and his rookie season, 2019-20, 64 games played, which I know he's been scratched too. Like not all of it's due to injury, but the point being is he's not been able to stay healthy, and unfortunately, I don't think he's going to live up to that third overall potential. Could he have ended up not panning out anyway? Possibly, but the injuries definitely have not helped, and it just seems like the injuries are not going to get any better anytime soon. It seems like he gets injured every year. Next up, just gonna take a sip of water real quick. We have some trades. Like I said, the trade deadline's in less than a week. So first, we saw Ryan Lindgren go to the Avalanche. The Avalanche received Ryan Lindgren, Jimmy Vesey, and Hank Kemp. In exchange, the Rangers receive Husso, Parsonen, Calvin DeHaan, a 2025 second-round pick, and a 2025 fourth-round pick. This season, Lindgren has 54 games played, 2 goals, 17 assists for 19 points, which he is a defenseman, so that is part of it too, but his defensive game also isn't what it used to be either. Like he's not nearly as good defensively as he once was. I don't think I don't think he's as terrible as some people act, but definitely not the guy that the first pair partner for Adam Fox that he once was. Then you got Jimmy Vesey, 33 games played this year, 4 goals, 2 assists for 6 points, and Kemp hasn't played in the NHL yet. He's at Cornell University, but it's almost 23 years old. So, I mean, we'll see if he plays in the NHL, but as of now, he's not showing that he's going to become like a star or like a key contributor in the NHL. What was I saying? I think this is an overpay for Colorado because you look at what they gave up to. Parsonen this season has in 38 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points, so a solid depth forward. And then Calvin DeHaan has 45 games played, 0 goals, 8 assists for 8 points, but as a depth defenseman. So 2 depth pieces as players wise for Lindgren, Vesey, and Kemp, which seems fine. Those aren't like the issues with what the Avalanche gave up, but then they also gave up a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick, both in 2025. And I just can't like see that as a valid return because like you add the 2 depth players the Rangers get as well as the 4th and 2nd round pick, and I'm not even sure I'd give a 2nd round pick for Lindgren alone. You do have all these other assets thrown in here, but like Vesey is a bottom 6 guy, and Kemp has obviously good chance he won't play in the NHL, so they're really not going to have much to offer. Most of what the Rangers are getting is Ryan Lindgren, and I would not say he's worth a 2nd round pick. And you also have a 4th round pick. I think if the Rangers had just given up Parsonen, DeHaan, and the 4th round pick, that would have been fine. But it's the 2nd round pick I said the Rangers gave up. If the Avalanche gave up just Parsonen, DeHaan, and the 4th round pick, I think that would have been fine. But I think the 2nd round pick is where it goes too much. Not terrible for the Avalanche because 2nd round picks really are a little overrated. Like there's a good amount that turn into something, but there's also a good amount that don't. But yeah, I do think the Rangers do win this trade, unfortunately, because I'm a Caps fan. But so I obviously am not rooting for the Rangers, but I unfortunately do think they win this trade. Moving on with another trade, we have Gustav Nyquist traded to Minnesota. The Wild receive Gustav Nyquist, and the Predators receive a 2026 2nd round pick. This season, Nyquist has 50 games played, 9 goals, 12 assists for 21 points. Obviously, he played for the Wild for a brief time in 2023 after the deadline. He's a solid middle sixer. He's not going to be a first liner or anything, but they gave up a 2nd round pick for him, which I think for a middle sixer, that's fair. But yeah, Minnesota is obviously going to look like a dangerous team in the playoffs this year. So I think that adding a guy like Nyquist will really help them in the middle six. Next, the biggest trade we've had, Seth Jones trades to the Panthers. Obviously, there's been huge debates on whether or not he'd be traded, people questioning it, and he's headed to the Panthers now with a 25% cap hit retained. The Blackhawks receive in exchange Spencer Knight and a 2027 first-round pick. I think this is a good trade for both teams. Just like with the Nyquist trade, I kind of gave my thoughts on Nyquist, but not really a trade. I thought it was good for both teams because Minnesota gets a solid middle six forward, and Nashville gets a 2nd round pick. And like I said, they're probably entering a rebuild now, or at least a retool. So that's going to help them there. Jones, back to the Jones trade though. I think it's a good trade for both teams because the Panthers receive Seth Jones, which obviously I think he gets overhated a lot because people just talk about how overpaid he is, which he is overpaid. I believe he makes like $8 to $9 million. He is definitely overpaid. However, I think people act like because he's overpaid that he's really bad, which he really isn't. This season, 42 games played, 7 goals, 20 assists for 27 points. Past 3 seasons, 181 games played, 27 goals, 68 assists for 95 points. His defensive numbers aren't that great, but the point being is, no, he's not worth the money he's getting. He's getting like star defenseman money, top pair money, but for a guy for a second pair guy that for a spot like the second pair, then I think he really fits that role well. So getting 25% of that salary retained, I think this is a good pickup for Florida. He'll fit, like I just said, he can still, he's not the first pair guy that he once was, the elite defenseman that he once was, but I think he can definitely still be a solid second pair guy. So, I think this is a good trade for Florida. In exchange, the Blackhawks receive Spencer Knight, a goalie, 23 years old. I will say he's shown that he's a good backup, and he is still relatively young for a goalie. So I think he still has some potential. We'll see Chicago now. We'll see him. We'll probably see him get a lot more playing time because obviously in Florida they have Bob as their starter already. But we'll see what he does in Chicago. I'm not sure it'll be like an elite goalie, but I think he can become a solid starter still for sure. And then they also get a 27 first round pick, which first round pick is always good at the trade deadline. Speaking of Florida, though, we've got some concerning news. It was reported after Four Nations that Matthew Tkachuk was injured, and they're now saying he could be injured for the rest of the season and has been placed on LTIR. This was reported by Puckpedia. And of course, a lot of people are now thinking, oh, is Florida going to try and circumvent the cap like a lot of teams do with this injury, which it could work out for them that way. However, I'm starting to wonder if the source I'm seeing and the news I'm seeing about this Tkachuk's injury, I'm starting to wonder, is it actually legit? Like, is he actually possibly going to be out for the rest of the season? Which, if he is, that's not good news for Florida at all. He's been very key to them in the playoffs the past couple of years. Past 2 postseasons, he has 24 games played, 6 goals, 16 assists for 22 points. But like, obviously he does more than just the stats show. Like, he plays the gritty style that you need in the playoffs. I've mentioned players who can't really perform in the playoffs because they're not like physical enough or they don't like have the grindy play style, but Tkachuk fits that role perfectly. And he's been one of the best players in the playoffs the past couple of years. So if Florida doesn't have him in the playoffs, then they're really in big trouble. It's going to be hard to replace it. I mean, they could find like another forward to try and help with scoring at the deadline, but it's going to be really hard to replace Tkachuk's presence, just physicality, leadership, and everything. So hopefully for Florida, he's not out too long, like as far as, the entire playoffs, but I'm starting to question that with Florida if he's going to be back this season or not. And then we also had another unfortunate injury. Jack Hughes last night went to the boards against Vegas, crashing the net, kind of got tangled up with Eichel, and he went basically headfirst into the boards. He was down for a good minute too, got up, holding his arm or like his shoulder. So I'm wondering, it kind of looked like could be a collarbone, could be a shoulder injury, but it looked like something like that. And if he broke his collarbone or shoulder, then he really could be, he could be out for the rest of the season too, which that's not good news for the Devils at all because they're currently, where's standings? They're currently 5-5-0 in their last 10. They started slipping up. Also, Columbus is starting to catch up with them. Columbus is now 4 points behind them with 68, but also 2 games in hand. So if Columbus was to like win the next 2 games, I guess if they were to somewhat catch up with the Devils, I'm not sure what each team's next game is. So Devils might self-play again. I mean, but like, you get the point though. If Columbus was to win each of their next 2 games or whatever, they'd have the same record as the Devils. So, or same point total as the Devils. Devils would win the tiebreaker with more wins and stuff. But like, Point being that the Blue Jackets are catching up with them, and now they don't have their superstar forward for we don't know how long yet, but looks like it could be a decent amount of time. Then that's not going to be good for them, especially if they get into the playoffs too. Not having your best forward is really going to hurt you. So hopefully Hughes isn't injured too badly for the Devils, but if he is, then I'd say they probably lose in the first round. They're likely to play Carolina in the first round, and without Jack Hughes, I definitely favor Carolina over New Jersey. So I'm going to take a little break, and then I'll come back and I'll talk about the second part of my show. I'll probably how much time do I have left? I got about 20 minutes, so you know what? Never mind. I'm going to just keep going. I'm going to just talk about like some of the standings right now, because lots happened. I've not really talked about it, just done the thing where I just go through the standings and give my thoughts yet recently, because coming back from winter break, I just had so much news to talk about that happened over the month. I didn't have the show going that, so Metro Division right now, top three are the Caps, 84 points, Carolina, 74 points, and New Jersey, 72 points. Caps, of course, I'm loving it. Caps are so far ahead that I think they're pretty much safe. Winning the division, probably winning the conference too, but I think they're I'd have a hard time seeing them not winning the division unless they were going on a crazy losing skid. Which they are on a 3-game losing streak right now, but I think they will pull together. But Carolina is still 74 points, and while New Jersey is just 2 points behind them, Carolina does have a game in hand, and I just feel like Carolina's more just looking better recently than just not like recently, because they are currently 4-6 in the last 10, but I just have more faith in Carolina. Their defensive system. I think they're very well coached by Rod Brindamore. They've got guys like Aho, Svechnikov, Rantanen now, although we'll see if he gets traded again, because they can't seem to get a contract in place, and of course they don't want to lose him for nothing. But the point being is I thought that the Devils and Hurricanes were pretty evenly matched, but now the Hurricanes don't have if the Devils don't have Jack Hughes, then I would definitely go with the Hurricanes, because the Hurricanes defense is really great too. Slavin, Brent Burns, and goaltending is a question for the Hurricanes, but I think the defense will make up for that for sure. We saw, because it's not like their goaltending is terrible. If Freddie Anderson can come back, especially, then they'll be set in net. I think Anderson will be a little rusty at first, but he's shown that he can come back and get his game on top again pretty quickly. So yeah, if I think the Hurricanes are, I'm more confident in the Hurricanes than the Devils at this point to finish second in the division, and if they meet the playoffs, which they likely would if in this case, I definitely favor the Hurricanes. And then top three in the Atlantic, you got Toronto, Florida, and Tampa. Tampa's obviously been on a roll recently, 9-0-1, and in their last 10 and 1-8. All three of the top three teams have been on a roll. Toronto is 8-2 in the last 10, 5 in a row. Florida is 8-2 as well, 3 in a row. So you got some teams in Atlantic going on fire, and then speaking of being on fire in the wild card race, you got the Blue Jackets at the number 1 wild card spot, 4 in a row, and they're currently sitting with 68 points, 22-8. And in the first wild card spot, like I said, just 4 points behind the Devils with 2 games in hand. And what they're doing this season is absolutely insane. I thought for sure they were locked to finish near the bottom of the league, and they're surprising everyone. Of course, the tragic loss of Johnny Gaudreau has something to do with it. I think just the team wanting to play for him, but it's just been a magical season for Columbus, and I'm really thinking the wild card race will be competitive, but I'm really getting the gut feeling that Columbus will pull off the surprise this year and make the playoffs. Second spot, you got the Red Wings, currently 66 points in 60 games, which is 2 points behind the Blue Jackets. Obviously those two teams played in the Stadium Series the other night. I did not watch it, unfortunately. I wouldn't say unfortunately, because I was hanging out with my friends, which I had a great night, but I've not gotten around to watching the highlights yet, so I can't really talk about it. I've heard that the Red Wings were fouled a lot. The refs missed a lot of calls on the Red Wings that led to the Blue Jackets scoring, which I don't know. I've not, like I said, not watched the replays, but I just really think the Columbus is going to do it. The team just on a roll right now. They're so motivated. They're playing so well together, and I don't really see that stopping with them. Red Wings, I think they might make the playoffs. They've been doing good this season too, but they're also competing with Ottawa with 64 points, and also Ottawa has a game in hand on both the Red Wings and Blue Jackets. Rangers are fourth in the wild card race, currently 64 points as well in 60 games. I think they are missing though. I just don't know that I see them. They just seem like such a mess right now that I don't know that I could see them making the playoffs. Then you get the Bruins, 64 points, same with them. I think they are missing it. I think they're still in the wild card race, but they just don't give me the feeling, like just watching them. I just don't think that they've got it to make the playoffs this year. There's a mess right now, multiple injuries, and remember Pasternak's carrying the team. Like if it wasn't for Pasternak, they might be a draft lottery team. Or I take that back, they probably would be a draft lottery team. Then you got sixth place in the wildcard race, the Montreal Canadiens, 63 points. Then seventh, the Philadelphia Flyers with 62 points. Eighth, New York Islanders with 61 points. Ninth, Pittsburgh Penguins with 58 points. And bottom, you got the Buffalo Sabres with 53 points, which you got to feel for the Sabre fans. It's like every single year when they look like they have hope, every time, and they've not made the playoffs since 2010, never won a Stanley Cup. And it's like every time they look like they have hope, it looks like it looks like they're taking a step forward and they're going to break out the following season. It doesn't happen. I think they do have some good pieces like Dahlin and everything, but Luukkonen's not been what he was last year. It's looking like that probably was a fluke second half of the season. He's still, I think he'll still be a decent goalie, but not the dominant guy he was to end last year. Dahlin's a great defenseman, but yeah, it's like you got Thompson, you got Tuch, which we don't know what their futures are a little less certain with or not Thompson's, but Tuch's futures less certain with the team. Not looking like it's going to really change anytime soon, but who knows? It could change as quick as when we all think they're about to get better, they don't, and then they could like be like Columbus, and we think they're not going to get better for a while, and they come out of nowhere. So we'll see. Then Pittsburgh, second to last. I'm loving it as a Caps fan, although I will say it feels so weird this season to see Pittsburgh not doing well when the Caps are, because every year I've been watching hockey, the Caps and Penguins were both very good teams until the past 2 years. That both of them kind of regressed. They were, the Caps went through a full retool, and the Penguins, Penguins just kind of stuck. And now the Caps have surprised a lot of people, come back up. And the Penguins are still near the bottom. And the Penguins just don't come to me as a team that's going to be good anytime soon, because they're basically just riding it out with Crosby now. But you see them, they just don't have it. Like Malkin's good still, but he's not what he used to be. Letang's not what he used to be. Erik Karlsson's not what he used to be. The goaltending's not been reliable enough. It's just, you could tell that the years have caught up with this team, and I'm not really sure where they go from here, because they don't have really any valuable assets to offer up, and except for Crosby, who we know they're not trading. And then once he retires, they're probably going to go full rebuild. So we'll see how long it takes till they make the playoffs again. And then you got the Islanders and Flyers. I thought the Islanders were going to be better, but I still was not expecting them to be a playoff team. So it's whatever with them. And then Flyers, obviously, I was not expecting them to be good this year either. Moving on to the West, in the Central, you've got the Winnipeg Jets first in the league with 88 points, Dallas second with 80 points, Minnesota third with 74 points. Then in the Pacific, you have Vegas first with 78 points, Edmonton second with 74 points, and LA third with 70 points. I think the Pacific is set with those top three teams. Because after that, you got Calgary, who's currently the second wildcard spot with 65 points, 5 points behind the Kings, who have 2 games in hand, and the Canucks with 65 points as well in 60 games. I probably would favor the Canucks a little more and make the playoffs over the Flames, just because I think they are a more talented team, but I don't think they're going anywhere. It seems like it's just a hot mess in the locker room. I know they trade JT Miller, but I would think even Miller is a problem. It's got to be more than just him for the whole team to be having issues. So I think the Canucks are better than the Flames, but it would not surprise me if the Flames were the one to make it, but I don't think either team is going anywhere. Then for the Central, I think Winnipeg's definitely winning the division. Then Dallas looks like they're pretty much a safe second. Minnesota and Colorado, I think, can go back and forth between the first wildcard spot and the third division spot, but either way, I don't think their teams, like if whoever's in the wild card, I don't think it's a team that you could take lightly. Like I think that no matter who makes what spot, they're going to give their opponent a fit for sure. Then moving on to the wild card race, I said Vancouver's currently the third spot in the wild card race, first like out of the wild card race, first that's not currently in a wild card spot with 65 points in 60 games. The Blues next with 64 points in 62 games. Then the Utah Hockey Club with 63 points in 61 games. Then the Anaheim Ducks with 59 points in 59 games. Kraken at 7th in the wildcard race with 56 points in 61 games. Predators, obviously, like I said, are third last in the league in their conference. 49 points in 60 games. Chicago, 43 points in 60 games, and San Jose, 39 points in 61 games. So I think the West, like I said, the East is going to have a lot more of a wild card race, but I think the West is more set on the teams. Like I think those top 3 Pacific teams are set. I think that Winnipeg, Dallas, Minnesota, and Colorado are all making it. I think, one of them will definitely be in the wild card spot, but I think whichever team it is between Minnesota and Colorado, I think will be in the first wild card spot. I think the second wild card spot is going to come down, but I mean, obviously between Calgary and Vancouver, I think St. Louis could be in that mix too. Utah, I think their future's looking amazing, but I just don't think it's quite there yet. I think they do have a few more years, but it should not be discouraging for Utah fans in their first year, because they've shown so much more promise this year than in the previous years in Arizona. I think their future is amazing. I just don't think it's quite their time yet. But yeah, I'm gonna end the show off, talk about the Caps like I always do. Starting off, where is it? Okay. Ovi, now 11 goals away from the goal record. I was saying the other day, I just can't believe that we're actually here. I remember when I started following hockey almost 10 years ago now, and he had over 500 goals at the time, and people were starting to question, could he maybe catch Gretzky's goal record? But a lot of people were like, that's, didn't think much of it, because he still was at like 500 goals. Like he needed almost 400 more to get to Gretzky. And then in 2018, when he hit 600, he also won the Stanley Cup that year. So his name was all over the headlines, and people thought, the question was starting to arise more, but people were like, he might, but that's still a long ways away. It's going to be really hard for him, because obviously we didn't know how he was going to age either. He was 32 at the time, and you really don't know how a player will go through his 30s, but he's turned out to do really well through his 30s. Then in 2020, he reached 700 goals, and was now top 10 all time in goals. And that's where people started to really speculate, could he maybe catch Gretzky's record? Like people started to believe more that he would catch Gretzky's record. However, the following season in 2021, he had a down year, 24 points in, I believe, 45 games. So not terrible, but it was showing signs of that was like 44 goal pace. And I'm not sure if I said 24 points. I think I meant 24 goals. If that's what I said, I meant 24 goals. But that's 44 goal pace. He was on pace for like 76 points, less than a point per game. So wasn't terrible, but people were getting worried that he might be starting to regress. But then he shut that narrative down, or not that narrative, that speculation down in the following season, 2021-22. 36 years old, puts up 50 goals, 90 points at 36 years old, and moves all the way up to third all time in goals, passing Jaromir Jagr. And then December 2022, passes Gordie Howe, scoring his 802nd goal. And by that point, everyone's known since he was going to get the record. Even last year when he had a down year, we knew he wasn't going to retire until he got it. But it's just been so many years of build-up, of speculation, of anticipation, and it feels so crazy, so surreal that the time has actually come now. He also reached 19 30-goal seasons last week, which he already had the record of the most 30-goal seasons in history with 18, and then he just added to his own record with 19. It's just crazy. He continues to do all this, scoring 30 goals still at 39 years old, breaking his own records. It's been amazing to watch. We're just witnessing history here. And we have more than just Ovechkin going off the Caps. Charlie Lindgren re-signed this morning for 3 years, $3 million a year, which I love this contract for Lindgren. I was worried when we were about to re-sign, like he was going to want more money because of the season he had last year, which I thought last season was a fluke. I didn't think that at the time. I was hoping it would not be a fluke, but I think it's turning out. I think it is. I think it will turn out to be a fluke. He's still a good backup goalie, but I don't think he's a solid starter. I don't think he's necessarily a starter, or a legit starter on a good team. But so I was worried that maybe he'd ask for more like starter type money, but no, he's signed for 3 years, $3 million a year. I think that's great I think he's one of the best backups in the league, so I think it's great for a backup. And yeah, I'm really he seems to love being here in Washington, so I'm really excited to watch him for the next 3 years. We got from Russian Machine Never Breaks the other day. We got that Sonny Milano's practicing a regular jersey. I felt sorry for him this year because he had a rough start to the season, and then when he was scratched a lot, then he finally gets to play and gets injured, and he's been out most of the year, so it's been a really tough season for him. I'd love to see him come back though and be able to do something big, like score a hat trick would be nice. But we'll see how he gets in the lineup, because obviously the team has great chemistry, but we're not sure how they're going to do with like putting more guys in the lineup, because there's been so many guys that are scratched all the time because they don't want to mess up the lines that are doing so well. So we'll see when he comes back how he does. And I just want to get my thoughts on the Caps ahead of the trade deadline. It's looking like there's been speculations if they could get guys like maybe Brock Nelson, Jarrett McCann, Brandon Tanev's been a situation. I would love to see Brandon Tanev on the Caps just because I love the ghost face he does, and seeing him on the Caps would be so cool. But I'm starting to think they're not going to do anything at the deadline. They're starting to hint that they might stay more reserved, which I wouldn't hate, because they just have such good chemistry right now that obviously you don't want to mess up the chemistry. And I see both sides. Like, of course, when you add players, you're getting them just in case an injury happens or someone kind of goes invisible in the playoffs. But then, if you end up not needing them, you scratch them. So I feel like it can't hurt to add at the deadline, but I also see the side the Caps are thinking with the chemistry, they just don't want to mess it up. So I see both sides. I would say that I wouldn't mind adding at the deadline, but I also would not really be upset if they didn't add it. Sorry, I'm trying to talk too fast because I've got a few minutes left. If they didn't add at the deadline, I think that I would be fine with that too, just because the chemistry is so strong on this team. But yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys next week. It'll be past the trade deadline will pass, so I'll probably have a lot of trade to talk about. But thank you for listening once again, and I hope you have a great day. See you next week.